Well, I mean, they've certainly looked like a rejuvenated squad lately, but I don't know how much of that is sort of necessarily Schmetzer coming in and anything he's doing, as much as it is just a mid-season coaching change is always going to bring an added sense of urgency. And I think you can feel that. I mean, guys have kind of been playing for their futures and playing for their jobs, and within this new formation, everybody's sort of feeling their way out. So certainly there's been an increased sense of urgency under Schmetzer, but I think a lot of that is just typical of any mid-season coaching change is going to inspire some of that. They certainly have a chance. I mean, they've put themselves back in the conversation here. I think that this weekend's game could say a lot if they go down and get a win in San Jose, could get within a single point with another game in hand. I mean, they're going to have a pretty good shot either way. I think it would lower their ceiling as to what they could do in the playoffs, because for a couple weeks there, with Lodero in the fold and Dempsey and Morris playing off each other, they looked like a team that could go and make a pretty deep run the way that they were all clicking. So I think that without Dempsey, they could still find their way in, especially with teams like Portland faltering and everything else, but I think that they probably have a little bit of a ceiling if he doesn't come back. If they don't, I think that it's been pretty clear that sort of the audition is probably he needs to get into the playoffs to make a serious case for the full-time gig. I think that they've been pretty clear about how this is sort of his audition, and part of that audition is you make it or you don't. In this league, that's sort of a pretty clear demarcation line, and maybe it's unfair that he came in so late and with such a gap to make up, but I do think that they're probably viewing a little bit as he needs to get them into the playoffs to make a serious run at the job.
Vibe around the team is different with Schmetzer in there as opposed to Ziggy. Schmetzer has kind of a more upbeat style. I've heard a few guys call him a player's coach, and you kind of do see that just in the vibe around practice, and I think that does translate to the game a little bit. I mean, whether that's a good or a bad thing kind of will remains to be seen over the next few weeks here, but I definitely think the mentality and just the overall atmosphere at training is different. I have noticed that. I mean, that's the big question. I think without Dempsey, assuming that he is out for an extended period of time, or if he does end up being kept out of action for the rest of the season, that will make the road to the playoffs a lot more difficult. I don't want to say impossible. Things have started to gel for them in recent weeks. So I definitely think, especially with how the rest of the Western Conference is shaping out and the results that we saw last weekend, I think the path is still there and it's definitely still possible. Without Dempsey, a lot more difficult, certainly. I think if they make the playoffs and they make a bit of a run, that will be enough to earn him the permanent job for next year. Now, if they miss the playoffs, it gets a little dicier. So I think his future really hinges on the team coming together for this last part of the season, making it to the playoffs and making a little bit of a run. If he does that, I definitely see a situation where they retain him. If they tailspin, miss the playoffs, and the season kind of becomes a lost season, then it definitely becomes dicier for him.